It's my great pleasure to have Erena Oliver with me. Erena is an outstanding colleague working in New Zealand. I'll get her to introduce herself in a moment. So Erena and I met many years ago in conferences, and since that time we've had a collegial relationship between us, which has been rich and diverse and highly regarded. So I'd ask you, Erena, if you could just introduce yourself and talk about, where you've come from in your journey to reach the place where you are at the moment.
Thank you, Neil. It's a pleasure to be here. I grew up in a farming community, so very much in love with the earth and the animals and of nature, and it's something that I lost sight of for a big part of my life, and I think an aspect of that was what created a lot of challenges for me. But through my nursing background and then exploring natural remedies, in particular flower essences and essential oils, I managed to incorporate those into our daily life so much, and it made a big impact on our life. Later on, I had the opportunity to learn a couple of energy modalities based on the premises that our bodies are self-healing mechanisms, and when given the right conditions and the right information, our bodies heal very effectively. So the modalities that I have learned are based on the premises that our bodies are self-healing mechanisms. So when we give them the right information, the right conditions, their bodies can heal effectively and well. They are very adaptable and flexible. So through my personal journey of bullying and abuse and relationship issues, depression, I've done a lot of work on myself and have worked with a lot of clients, and I've come to the realization that the work that I'm actually doing is very integrative. So it's including our relationships, our well-being, and life in general. It's something that we can't separate. Had the opportunity to become an author this past year, where I shared a little bit of my relationship journey in transforming verbally and emotionally abusive marriage of 24 years to something that's really quite juicy and keeps on getting better. So my understanding of the connection with our health and well-being and bullying and abuse is when we feel powerless, our immune system and our digestive system also feel powerless, and potentially all the microbes and cells in our body. And this creates a situation in our body where autoimmune dysfunction starts to become very prevalent within our body. Through the work that I've done, through myself, through the sessions that I've had with Neil and one or two other practitioners, we've managed to bring my body back into a state of wellness, because I had been experiencing, probably for about a period of 15 years, the symptoms of fibro and MS. And when I started understanding this and correlating it with the bullying and abuse, the more work I did on the inner bully and how I treated myself, the more well I became. And now I'm symptom free. So the other understanding that I had was that when I'm treating myself disrespectfully and unkindly and abusively, that energetically sets up an unspoken message to others in my environment that it's actually okay for them to treat me like that as well. So as I've dealt with that, then the external bullying has also stopped.
Yeah. Wonder if I could just catch you there, Erena. So,
Sorry.
no. Look, it's fantastic what you're talking about. It's so useful for people. What would you consider would be the beginning point? Does it actually begin by this internal bullying process inside ourselves, or do we actually experience it from the environment first? Where is it first actually seen in the person?
Where is it seen? That's actually a really good call. I don't actually think it really matters when it comes to a point of treatment, because wherever we start, we're going to make some difference. For me personally, I think it came from the environment.
Okay.
And then that was internalized, but there's just my basic understanding. And it doesn't matter where we start. People can come with health issues, and without a doubt, often there is bullying and abuse issues going on, whether it's externally, it's always internally. But whatever we work on, when we have this awareness and the understanding that it's all connected, not only do we make changes in our health and well-being, but the bonus is our relationships transform, and the bonus is that our health and well-being transforms as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so the issues around this pandemic have a tremendous connection to this being a victim, and we can see people being victims all the time. And so this notion that we can actually set up immune response issues, which are inappropriate because we're feeling this sort of victim bully process going on, so we get all these autoimmune things going on. This is critical information that you're sharing here now. So please continue on with that. Yeah.
So fear weakens our immune system, and anger feeds it. Now, both of these emotions are really important for us for living. Fear actually keeps us safe. However, when it's expressed inappropriately, it paralyzes us and weakens our immune system. Anger feeds viruses in particular. Anger is very necessary for us because it helps us to keep moving on our path. It gives us the energy to fight or flee. But when anger is not expressed healthily, it causes issues in our body, and it will feed viruses. So when we look at our society today and we look at the intense fear that is going on, and potentially a lot of anger that's out there when we see people hoarding supplies from shops and not thinking of other people, we've got a sitting duck for a virus to go viral, instead of it just being like a normal flu or a cold that seems to rise most prevalently in the winter months of our years.
Yeah, sure.
So,
I wonder if we could just have a little bit of a divergent here and just have a look at what you're seeing. You're in the northern part of the South Island of New Zealand, so
yep.
For many people watching this, it's a long way away from home. But what are you seeing in your community? What's going on around in your community at the moment?
On the whole, I'm seeing business as usual. Visually, I am hearing a lot of fear. I'm hearing that some of the supermarkets have got very empty shelves and people running short of supply. However, I was at the supermarket that I usually shop at last night and again this morning, just out of curiosity, and probably the toilet paper aisle is the most depleted, but there's still plenty of toilet paper on there for anybody who would like. But there was plenty of fruit and vegetables, there was plenty of meat, there was plenty of dry goods, and people were just shopping as per normal.
Okay.
So,
well, that's fantastic.
yeah.
So, you know, given the global response to it, would you identify that New Zealand, the rural area that you live in there, or small town area that you live in, is a bit isolated from the sort of global hysteria? Would you identify that, or is that making too much of an assumption?
No, I would say that they're being very proactive. I know that they are setting up stations where people can go and be tested to make sure that if they've got any concerns. So this is outside of GPs and the hospital. They've set up. I know that the Prime Minister has closed our borders to everybody bar Kiwis. So I feel that there's a lot of proactivity done. I don't think the hysteria generally is what people are witnessing in other countries, but I think there are definitely pockets of that within New Zealand, and understandably so, because people's livelihoods potentially are at risk with this, and it's that whole unknown. And uncertainty. Am I still going to have a job at the end of this, or how am I going to provide for my family while this is lasting, and that sort of thing. So, yeah. Okay,
and you know, you're answering the next question that we're talking about, which is, you know, like your actual view of what's going on. So it's not only what you're seeing, but that interpretation of what's happening there. And it's certainly interesting, and you know, I have to congratulate the New Zealand people. They're clearly, you know, a lot more pragmatic and practical than you know, what we're experiencing here in Australia. That's for sure. So, what is your feelings? You know, you've mentioned about the changes to the immune system based on fear and anger. What other, you know, sort of observations do you have around, you know, the actual viral processes, you know, so like the transmission of the viruses and so on? You know, what's your sort of your thoughts and your feelings around all of that?
There is potentially concern with this virus for those that are immune compromised, the elderly and maybe the young as well. But from what I understand is more people are dying of heart disease, the normal flu, and diabetes than what have actually died from this. And when we think about viruses, mostly they seem to be prevalent in the colder months of the year. They don't seem to happen in the summer months, unless of course a person is more immune compromised and maybe more fear-based. And that, so we need to look at, okay, so what's the difference between the winter and the summer? Potentially it's the heat. And that, so one of the things that I have coming to understand is the warmer air temperatures that we're breathing in helps to keep our passages more free of viral conditions than what the colder temperatures do.
So some really good evidence around that. There's certainly some good evidence. Okay, so let's go and look into the relationship stuff. So we're looking, you know, in terms of how families are. And I remember you joked to me that the main trauma for people with the idea that they might be having to be locked in their homes for a couple of weeks was that they'd have to actually be there with their families. And you know, it's a lovely joke to make. And you know, I'm sure that there's some stuff sitting under there. So what if you can talk about what are the sorts of things that people can be actively involved in to actually improve this sort of internal condition for themselves as well, and for their whole experience in their life as well.
Yeah. So when I made that joke, it was the fact that our society has become so materialistic and financially driven that it seems to have disconnected us from each other, and in particularly families, and heightened the stress level. So, and this is my personal perspective and understanding. So what happens is that mum and dad usually, or partners, are both out working because they need to have that income to have the lifestyle that they've got. And the children are off to school, they come home from school, mum and dad aren't home, they go to after school programs and things like that. And everybody else is taking care of them. Mum and dad are only there for part of their day, and they're stressed in amongst it because they've got so much other stuff going on. And this is certainly not a judgment at all. It's an observation and an understanding, because I have been there in our own situation. So when we become stressed, when we become overwhelmed and overloaded with what's going on in our own lives, we tend to forget about other people, and in particular our children. And one of the things, and I'm just starting to see this more now from my own perspective, is that we tend to feel that our children should be more grown up than what they are, that they should be behaving differently, that they should be more understanding and more accepting. And I can remember seeing a post the other day on Facebook where the woman was complaining about her daughter making inappropriate jokes and behaving how she felt was inappropriate and very light-hearted over the last few weeks. And my reply to that was, have you considered that this teenager is probably absolutely terrified of what's going on in the world at the moment? Nobody's taken the time to explain to her. She doesn't know what this is going to mean for her life. She doesn't know whether she's going to be able to see her friends again or when she's going to be able to see them. So all of those fears and everything that come up as children and as adults, we've forgotten what it's like to be a child and have all of those fears and not understand. So I think that one of the pieces of gold that I can see in this virus is that it's giving us the opportunity to reconnect with ourselves and what really matters to us, but to reconnect to each other and in the family, and start to learn who we're actually living with, who our child actually really is. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? What are they actually afraid of? And to be able to do this without judgment and without criticism, to be able to do this to encourage that child to be the awesome being that they actually are, rather than feel that they have to be a certain way to live up to somebody's standard, or that they can't express themselves because they're afraid of being told, oh, don't be stupid, or you're dumb, or whatever. So I see the gold that this virus can potentially be giving us to reconnect and to really start to communicate, to appreciate and accept everybody's uniqueness and their differences. So, yeah.
No, it's just really interesting. So that's the gift in it, isn't it? That's the gift that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And it's really without a doubt. And how equipped do you feel people are to actually meet that? Are they getting guidance around, being more aware of?
Yeah, they're in survival mode. And we've got two modes of operation as humans. One's fight flight, which is stress, and the other's growth and healing. And we can't be in both at the same time. So we're either trying our best to survive and dealing with all the overwhelm and the stress and everything that's going on there, which shuts us down. Stress stops our thinking brain from operating. It puts the reactive brain into gear, so we become reactive and we're wired to fight or flee. So the other mode of operation that we've got is rest and relaxation. So this is growth and healing. This is harmony. This is peacekeeping. This is acceptance. This is appreciation for what is in life. And because we can't be in both modes, where is the general population? It's in fight flight. Mm-hmm. And while we're in fight flight, we can't start to understand. I can remember when I started my journey dealing with the bullying and abuse, and particularly the self-abuse, and that I couldn't see it because I was enmeshed into it. And yet the more that I started to look at myself and to look at my behaviours, what I was thinking and what I was feeling, I gradually started to see the role that I was playing and just how disconnected I really was.
Okay. So, Erena, given that we've got a situation where, the individual who might be watching this presentation is in a fight-flight mode, so like they're in that stress mode, and we know that in that situation they're desperate to try and actually help the situation, and they'll be desperately concerned about the pressures coming from the family. So the family will be all acting up, and there will be difficulties going on and so on. And the last thing that they want is for this to be continuing. However, the chances of the person being able to collect it in some sort of way, where they can really see the depth of it, they actually understand what's fueling it underneath it all, and then work out strategies for making it harmonious, making it whole. It's an extraordinary thing, isn't it, to do. So we're going to look, if you could just talk a little bit further about that, that'd be wonderful.
So the things that people can do. Yep. Probably the most simple and cost-effective thing that people can do is to breathe. Don't stop breathing. Okay. And I say that with lightness. Our breath is something that we do automatically, and when we go into fight-flight, into stress mode, we tend to breathe more shallowly. So if we can start to take deeper, fuller breaths, it helps us to come more present to who we are. But there's also there's something that happens with the brain and the breath, and the brain can use the breath to scan the body. So just every time you think about it, even if you put some dots on some doorways in the house or on the steering wheel of the car, something that will help you to remember to focus on your breathing for at least 3 or 4 breaths, and just take some deeper, fuller breaths and come present with yourself. So that's probably the first and most simple thing. With compassion and kindness and gentleness, start to listen to the thoughts that you think and the words that you speak. We tend to be very, very critical of ourselves and what we're thinking, especially the thoughts that we have about ourselves and about others. But when we can start to listen to those thoughts and become aware of them, we can then course correct, because if you don't know you're doing something, you can't do anything about it. So when we start to listen to our thoughts and listen to the words that we're speaking, and start to become aware of them, we can say, well, actually, how does that make me feel? And if it doesn't make us feel very good, then we've got the choice, that wonderful thing called choice, to be able to reframe it and to think about something else, or to speak some other words.
Yeah.
Um,
So, oh, sorry.
no, well
We're talking about, the individual and collecting ourselves with the purpose of then being able to assist their families and so on and so forth. But what goes through my mind is that once a person becomes a bit aware of the fact that their own emotional state or their own state of presence is out of order and that that's affecting everybody else, it's likely to actually lead to more, bullying.
yeah.
Like I'm a bad person because I can't control my emotions. I'm
I've lost the plot again.
Yeah, I'm making it worse for the family. So, what guidance do you have for people to try and reverse that trend?
One of the key things is to start to communicate. But when we bottle things up, it just festers inside of us. So if we've got these concerns, these worries, and that we need to find somebody that is safe and that is, what's the word I'm looking for here? That's understanding and that has compassion without judgment for what it is that you're feeling and what it is that you're doing. So when we start to talk, when we start to voice what's going on inside of us, that has a lot of value to us because we can actually start to hear how it is and we start to get insights ourselves. I try to make myself available for free chat to people that just want to get some direction or whatever. There's no obligation to take it any further, but just start communicating. And this is another aspect of the gold that I see that this virus is giving us. With the potential of the self-isolation with our families, we can actually use this opportunity to start communicating. Where there's been a lot of bullying, abuse, of criticism, of resentment and that, it will be a little bit more challenging to start to have a conversation to somebody who's always nutted off at you. And, or you might feel really scared to start to open up to somebody who's been critical at you and told you you're useless, you're hopeless, and that sort of thing. And I know what that is because for a long time I had really struggled to find the courage to start speaking to my husband because of the way that I'd been treated. But the more courage that I got, the more that I started to do it, I realised, well, actually, he's just another person. And he really does want the best for me, even though he might not behave in that way in the past. And communication started to happen. So, but if you don't feel safe talking to your loved ones or those that are close, find somebody else to talk to, somebody that's going to lift you up and support you rather than knock you down or just feed. Because there are people out there that will just carry on and feed what's going on for you, and you don't want that. You want somebody that can help you to move through and out of the situation you're in into something that's far more beneficial.
Okay, so the heroic role is to just tackle the situation and the family right where you are in your stage of isolation, social distancing or whatever else it is that's going on. So that's a courageous process that you're actually engaged in if you're doing that. And your guidance then is to, if it's too tricky in there, well then get on the phone to somebody or call somebody up on FaceTime or Skype or something, but pick people who aren't going to be reinforcing these own negative patterns within yourself. So that can be a bit challenging because we spend a lifetime actually gathering friends and associates around us who think like us, behaving as we do. And of course, as you're beginning to wake up and do the kinds of things that you're advocating and working with people on, it's tricky because you want to be able to actually support them into a new place. And I know from my own experience that you can have these conversations going on with your associates, and you're beating your head against the wall. There's just no way that they're interested in actually coming out of the suffering. And of course, what you're endeavouring to do with people is to let them actually recognize their suffering in themselves for a start, and
Yes.
then to begin to make some changes. So,
because we don't need to suffer. We don't need to live a life of misery and suffering at all.
Well, it's that C word that you talked about at the beginning of your presentation. It's the choice, isn't it? You can choose. You can choose.
Yeah.
Okay, so try and find somebody who's a bit more positive, or of course, the other thing that you could always do is, find some positive type of information on YouTube, or if you're locked up in your home, you've got access to YouTube. You can find some good stuff that's just around.
Yep. No, there's some valuable stuff out there.
Then start talking about the safe parts of that. So, like, there will be safe parts in what you're actually observing, and you can talk to your loved ones, your family, about those things. A little bit. It's like baby steps, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. Gently, baby steps with a lot of compassion. I liken it to this: if you're a parent, when you had a child and they started to walk, you weren't behind them with a whip, slaying them, telling them to get up and stop being stupid and stop being clumsy and come on, you're not doing good enough. You were there every step of the way, encouraging them and cheering them on and supporting them to get up on their feet and walk. And this is what we've got to start to do to ourselves. We've got to become our own cheerleader and encourage ourselves and support ourselves and stop beating ourselves up and whipping ourselves and abusing ourselves when we start to make some changes.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, what was your three most important sort of recommendations to people, and perhaps being your own cheerleader would be one of them. What other things would you recommend to people as being really critical?
I think one of the most powerful understandings that I got was that when I'm being abusive and critical and judgmental towards myself, I'm setting up an energy or creating an energy in my whole being that says, I abuse myself. And energetically, this is something that emanates from us out into the world. And while other people may not recognize it for what it is, they may not understand it, their bodies, their systems pick up that flavor, and they'll be disrespectful, unkind, unthoughtful, and sometimes even abusive towards you. So know without a doubt that any self-criticism, self-judgment, self-blame, shame has an energy around it. And if that's what you're bathing in, that's what you're going to be attracting more of. And you don't want that. Unless, of course, you enjoy that. But, we want to be respected. We want to be accepted. We want to be appreciated, valued. We want to know that we matter. And while we're beating up on ourselves, that ain't going to happen.
No. So we've got be a cheerleader, and respect and value yourself would be the second one. What would be another one that you would recommend to people?
Treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. I think it's probably the most effective for somebody who's starting out on this journey. And that starts actually when we are speaking about ourselves or to ourselves. I mean, one of the questions that I used to ask myself was, my goodness, would you speak to somebody that you love like you speak to yourself? And the answer was always no. And it's like, well, actually, why do you do it to yourself then? I mean, this is everything that we do to ourselves as a being is what we're actually doing to the cells of our body. So when we're abusing ourselves through our thoughts and our words, we're actually abusing the physical cells of our body. So we're setting up disease. So this is not just airy, fairy, fluffy, woo-woo stuff. This has been proven that disease comes from our thoughts. You listen to Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's probably one of the world's leading people on this stuff, and he's got the research to back that up. So everything you're doing and saying to yourself as a being, you're actually saying to yourselves, and this is another thing that I love to talk about with the immune system, is like when you get the symptoms of a cold or a flu, get excited, because A, it means your immune system's working, but B, it gives your immune system energy to want to work more effectively. Whereas if you go and, oh, I'm sick again and I feel like it's wet week, or you know, my back's killing me or my throat's killing me, whatever it is, if you've got that sort of languaging going on and that sort of feeling going on, every cell in your body is feeling that. And why the heck would your cells want to support you when you're beating up on yourself?
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's your thoughts?
What's your thoughts? Well, look, that is absolutely wonderful sanguine advice. It's just marvellous to hear you talking about that. Do you have a parting message for the world? What would your message for the world be?
Ooh. Respect, acceptance, and appreciation for ourselves and for each other gives us a sense of safety and security. And when we're not feeling safe, fear sets in. So if you want a greater measure of safety in your life, or in your being, find ways that you can start to respect, accept, and appreciate yourself and others. And the more that you start respecting, accepting, and appreciating yourself, the more easy you will find accepting, appreciating, and respecting others.
Okay.
And then the world can be a safer place. Even from viruses.
Even from viruses, yeah. So that's wonderful. Oh, thank you so much, Erena. And yeah, no, it's a great privilege to actually have you here, and the you know, this work that you're doing with relationships, and you know, the work that led to it from the victim bully work that you did. It's got so much courage and so much message for people, and you know, I deeply respect and appreciate your work and your contribution, you know, to humanity. So thank you, and you know, go well.
Thank you.